See the live picture in Bangkok, still quite a mess there, obviously. Chris Hogg is there, out on the streets in the capital. Chris, what's the scene like now?
Let me give you a summary of what we're hearing from my colleagues who have been in the middle of all this first. At that crossroads right in the commercial district where the red shirt anti-government protesters had set up their stage. What I'm told the situation is down there is that most of the protesters have dispersed. There's just a few looters, was how it was described to me, left around there, a few individuals left around there. The red shirt protesters are being told to move further down the road to one of the SkyTrain stations where there is transport waiting for them to take them out of the city, because a lot of them come from the north and the northeast of Thailand. So that's the situation down there. My colleagues who were with the Thai army who were making that assault on that area, they say that the Thai soldiers that they're with have pulled back quite a few meters and are now standing easy. But it's very quiet there. It's very eerie. Almost nobody on the streets. Here where I'm standing, which is on the other side of the protest area, there is this checkpoint which has been closed for most of the afternoon, really, especially as the tension mounted probably about a couple of hours ago here when there were a couple of explosions nearby. That checkpoint is now open. People can now move into the area which is controlled by the soldiers. And there was this heavy lifting equipment behind these cranes and bulldozers and the like. And I just saw about 5 minutes ago them starting to move down the road. Now I assume that means that they are moving into position to start dismantling the barricades, because on this side, probably about 200 meters down the road, was the first set of barriers, the tires and the bamboo sticks that the red shirt anti-government protesters had erected on this side of their camp.
I mean, the bottom line to all this, Chris, is that after 6 weeks of encampment in the centre of Baghdad and intransigence from the red shirt protesters, effectively, they've been crushed here, haven't they?
They have, and a lot of blood has been spilled on the streets of Bangkok. And so you have to ask yourself, what is going to be the lasting legacy of that? I mean, this fight is over. But that was what the protesters' leaders were saying as they announced to the crowd that it was time to stop. They said, look, we have to surrender because we have to save lives, but this fight goes on, and that will be the concern now. And I think that was reflected in the conversation you just had with the government spokesman. You know, the concern is going to be how can they put in place as quickly as possible measures to try to encourage reconciliation, while at the same time keeping a sort of iron grip on this. I mean, as you pointed out, there are reports of trouble elsewhere in the country. There certainly have been clashes elsewhere in the city, outside the central area, over the last few hours. Pretty much, I would say, probably until nightfall, this mopping up operation is going to continue. And despite what the government spokesman is saying, I mean, our understanding is from the Thai army that they are calling a halt to their operations. But this is far from over.
I just want to ask, Chris, from the way in which the government spoke and discussed the potential for negotiation, for fresh elections, of course, that was agreed virtually at one point. If they go into talks now, having effectively overwhelmed the red shirt protesters, do you think they will do so with a level of sincerity, that they recognise the scale of the discontent within the country, and that things like a fresh election, things like longer-term social reforms, which the government spokesman mentioned, really will be dealt with?
That's an interesting question. I mean, I think one interesting point from their side is that this was a military operation that the military were being very clear about. It was under the direction of the government. So I think, first of all, that strengthens their position, that, you know, there have been concerns. Thailand is a country that's had many military coups in the past, and there are always concerns about the position of the military. The fact that the military and the government seem to be working closely together to a certain extent strengthens the hand of the government. But I don't think we're going to see any triumphalism, because they are well aware that this is a society that is split right down the middle. So they don't really have any other option, really, but to try to seek ways to heal these divisions. And when you listen to all the analysts, all the experts, they say, you know, no one has an answer, really. At least no one has an easy answer to how they're going to heal this. I mean, certainly on both sides, there are going to be people who say that there needs to be retribution. There needs to be as you heard said there needs to be now a process of justice. But those on the side of the red shirt anti-government protesters, they also want to call some in the government responsible for some of the bloodshed that has occurred on the streets, not just over the last few days, but last month as well. So this is going to be a very difficult process.
Chris, thanks very much indeed. We're just getting a picture there down of what looks like within the encampment area, a few people just wandering rather aimlessly around there. No great suggestion that there's any concerted effort to keep the protests going whatsoever at this stage. We can tell you there will be a curfew in place over Bangkok tonight. That was confirmed by the government spokesman here on BBC World News just a moment or two ago. And a 5-point plan has already been drawn up by the government, ready for mediation with the anti-government protesters. But of course they very much hold the upper hand, and one of those 5 points does concentrate on the issue of justice as a result of these demonstrations. We're going to have plenty more for you here on BBC World News. Thanks for being with us.